You think getting older makes everything easier. Doesn't. When I turned 50, I discovered a few truths nobody had ever warned me about, and one of them almost changed the way I saw the rest of my life. My name is Margaret, and this channel is about honest conversations on starting over, finding meaning, and building a life that actually fits you in the second half of life. Today I want to talk about something that many people feel but almost nobody says out loud. What it's really like to grow older and find yourself more alone than you expected. Most people imagine that life after 50 is calm and predictable. They picture quiet evenings, wisdom, and finally having time for hobbies. But the reality can feel very different. Sometimes loneliness creeps in quietly. Decisions suddenly feel heavier. And a kind of freedom appears that can feel exciting and terrifying at the same time. The first thing I learned is that loneliness at this stage of life feels different from the loneliness we experience when we're younger. When I turned 50, many of my friends were in completely different stages of life. Some were busy with demanding careers. Others were focused on raising teenagers. Some were caring for aging parents. Everyone had their own rhythm, and suddenly I realized I wasn't moving in sync with many of the people around me anymore. I remember one evening standing in my kitchen on a random Tuesday night. The house was quiet, the phone wasn't ringing, and a strange thought crossed my mind. I wondered who would notice if I disappeared for a few days. It wasn't a dramatic moment, but it was an honest one, and it made me realize something important. Loneliness isn't always about having no one in your life. Sometimes it's about losing the daily connections and routines that once filled your days. So I decided to change something. I started building new rhythms in my life. Small ones at first. I joined a local walking group that met every Saturday morning. I started attending a book club at the community library once a month. And the hardest step was learning to reach out to people instead of waiting for them to contact me. At the beginning it felt awkward. But awkward is better than invisible. Slowly those small efforts began to create new connections. The second truth I learned after 50 has to do with money and security. Financial decisions become much more emotional as we get older. Retirement, career changes, downsizing your home, or starting something new can feel overwhelming. It's not just about numbers anymore. It's about identity. There was a time when I had a stable job and a comfortable income. From the outside everything looked perfect. But inside I felt exhausted and disconnected from the life I wanted to live. The idea of leaving that job felt like failure. I worried about security. I worried about what people would think. I worried about making the wrong choice. Instead of making a huge dramatic change, I started with small steps. I reviewed my expenses and removed things that no longer mattered to me. I began building a small emergency buffer. I explored flexible work options that allowed me to work less, but live more intentionally. Those small changes helped me realize something powerful. Financial peace isn't about having the perfect situation. It's about creating a plan that gives you stability and freedom at the same time. The third truth surprised me the most. Freedom after 50 is very real. But it can feel uncomfortable when you're not used to it. After a major life change, I suddenly had more free time than I'd had in decades. At first I didn't know what to do with it. For a while I spent too much time looking backward and wondering how things could have been different. Then one afternoon I decided to try something completely new. I signed up for a beginner pottery class at a small studio in town. I had never done pottery before. My first attempts were terrible. The clay collapsed, the shapes were uneven, and my hands were covered in mud. But something unexpected happened. I started enjoying the process. That class introduced me to new people, new conversations, and a reminder that life can still surprise you. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to experiment with small new experiences. If you ever find yourself stuck or unsure about what comes next, try something simple. Take a class. Volunteer somewhere. Start learning a skill you've always been curious about. These small experiments can open doors you didn't even know existed. There are also some very practical things that make living alone easier. One of the smartest things you can do is create a simple emergency plan. Write down important contacts, where your documents are stored, and who can access your home if needed. Share that information with someone you trust. Another helpful habit is keeping a basic home maintenance routine. Simple things like checking your heating system, preparing for seasonal changes, and fixing small problems early can prevent major stress later. Health is another area that deserves attention. Regular checkups may not seem exciting, but they bring peace of mind. Knowing your baseline health can remove a lot of unnecessary worry. Technology can also help you stay connected. Video calls, online groups, and community apps can strengthen relationships when used intentionally. One winter, my heating system suddenly stopped working during a cold night. Because I had prepared and knew who to call, the situation was manageable instead of overwhelming. Small preparations can make a huge difference when something unexpected happens. But the most important lesson I learned after 50 is about perspective. Your story is not ending. It's simply changing direction. Instead of saying I'm alone, try thinking I now have the freedom to choose how I spend my time. Instead of saying I failed, try saying I learned something valuable about what truly matters to me. The way we talk to ourselves shapes how we see our lives. One habit that helped me shift my mindset was a simple daily reflection. Every morning I write down one thing I want to protect in my life. Sometimes it's my energy. Sometimes it's my health. Sometimes it's my curiosity about the world. Then I write down one small action I can take that day to protect it. At night I take a moment to remember one experience that brought me joy or meaning during the day. This simple habit slowly retrains your mind to notice possibility instead of focusing only on what you've lost. If you take one thing away from this conversation, let it be this. Life after 50 can feel uncertain, but uncertainty also means opportunity. You have the experience, the perspective, and the freedom to shape the next chapter in ways that were impossible earlier in life. Many people think the best part of life is behind them, but sometimes the most meaningful changes happen when we finally give ourselves permission to live differently. If you're watching this and you're going through a transition in your own life, think about one small experiment you could try this month. One small step that moves you toward a life that feels more meaningful. Because starting over doesn't always require a huge dramatic change. Sometimes it begins with a simple decision to try something new. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoy honest conversations about life, growth, and the second half of life, stay connected for more reflections like this.